This is the first time Jason has ever planted anything, so it's a miracle. This is a first for you, Jason. Other than when you had a little garden when you were little, it didn't grow much. Sorry. This being an elephant plant, if you hear any big knocks at your door, don't open it, because it grows little elephants.
So do you remember the first thing you ever drew?
Something for you, probably.
Do you remember that Yoda you drew me? You painted me?
Are we going to sell it and make money?
Yeah. It was really impressive that you did that without tracing it. You gonna tell me the truth now that you traced it?
I did not trace it. Wait till the next time you come over and I've got your elementary pictures framed on my house, and I'm gonna say that's my artist's son.
Like stuff I drew from elementary school. Look at how good he is. When you do stuff like this, though,
You feel better
I've
about
never seen you write anything down. Like, I've never seen you plan anything.
it. Like what? Like a garden?
Yeah,
I plan it from my artistic side. You put all the textures together. You don't worry about everything else as long as you got textures together. Like, look at this fern and look at this against it. Now, you go over there and plant that fern like I did this one? No. Let me do this.
You know I can't do it.
Take it out of the container, please.
Did anybody else on Granny's side of on your side of the family do anything artistic?
My mother was creative.
In what way?
She would, what little she decorated, she could actually decorate a pretty Christmas tree. She loved anything pretty flowers and decorative stuff. Anybody that loved color and little things that much was very creative, whether they had the opportunity to create or not. Same with Margie. Margie could have been one of the best wedding dress designers there is, but they didn't feel that that was important, or that you could make money at that sort of thing.
Well, what about how much more happy she would have been if she had been able
She'd have been a lot happier. It's like taking you and putting you in a room and not letting you draw or anything.
Exactly.
You'd climb the walls.
I was watching this documentary and this guy was talking, it's a musician that me and Patrick like, Nick Cave, and he said that his wife is a dress designer, and he said that when he comes home during the day, you know, or comes home from work, often the house is rearranged, and that he read that that's a sign of someone that's very that's very, very creative.
Well, your
But
father
doesn't have an outlet for it.
Your father always said, if I go home and the furniture's been moved, I just look for my chair wherever it is. To think how creative he was. He could fix anything, and he could build anything. He could look at something and find a better way to build it. And he could use less expensive tools and create something that someone created with the perfect tools. He'd figure out a way to fix it.
Yeah, I think that was a big influence.
Yeah.
Because to this day, like, I don't really value the tools, but I think I got to see the two of you do so much stuff around the house with, you know, I don't know when you watch your parents like figure out how to do things just because they have the impulse to do it, it sort of teaches you.
Well, like a friend of mine in Charleston, she grew up on a farm too, and we always talk about, on a farm you learn how to fix everything. You don't just stop doing something because the tractor breaks. You figure out how to fix that tractor, because to get someone to come out and fix it takes too much time and too much money. So you learn very quickly how to fix things, and you take care of your tools, you take care of your animals, because you need, those are like tools to you.
Right, but you talked about Grandpa Kennedy like walking around and sort of admiring what he'd done.
Yeah, if he planted a field that day, he got cleaned up and everything, he'd have his dinner and then he'd get out and walk those. We had a road that went all the way through the farm, and he would walk it just to admire the crops and what had been done. I think that was his way of finding satisfaction for a hard day's work.
Yeah, it was his artwork.
And learning from that then that what he did that day made a big difference. Do you know how much better a tomato tastes if somebody grew it and handed it to you off a vine? That's why they wanted it, because it was grown off a vine, a cucumber, a tomato, a cantaloupe, a watermelon. People would steal the watermelons in your field at night if you planted them by the road that was traveled all the time. Well, I guess that's why he always grew enough for him and everybody else.
Mm. Just spillage.
Yeah. But you and Patrick were given pencils and papers and books from the time before y'all could ever read and write. Y'all were introduced to all kind of creative things.
Yeah.
A lot of people can't afford to introduce their kids to it, or they know they weren't introduced to it, so they don't realize how important it is.
I can only imagine that when there were more gatekeepers, when it was harder to buy a camera or to get your paintings looked at, that back then a lot of people were just intimidated by the process of it.
Yeah, but a lot of people have to realize that as a little boy, you take your paintings to the Comic-Con here, the Heroes Con, and ask somebody to look at it. And then you come home and you draw for another year, and then you go back again.
Yeah, I used to.
So that's years of doing something.
I was a crazy person.
We all know that. That hasn't changed. You would wake us all up at night and say, we'd be sleeping, look at this, is this good? Look at this, look at this. And Patrick finally said, Mom, if you'll just pick out one thing on the drawing and tell him it's good, he'll leave you alone. You were a little nuts. But your brother is too. Look at him and his job. But he's good at it, and he is fair. So y'all also learn to be fair and treat people with respect.
Wow.
I think no matter what you do in life, as long as you're fair to people, treat them with respect, you'll do fine. But it's when you stop respecting another person just because of the color of their skin or their education or where they came from or anything, you're going to lose, because you're going to be hurt another person.
Well, you know, like, it's funny that I never thought I would ever work on a book like Spider-GWEN until I started working on it, and I realized that like without you, that would have never been something I felt comfortable doing.
Wow.
Because you taught me to be secure in myself and to think about what other people, to be empathetic to people, and without like having the ability to ask questions, I don't think that I would have ever been interested in writing that character, let alone been able to have any level of success at it, because it's so different than who I am in a lot of ways, at least on the outside.
Well, you weren't handed everything on a silver platter, but you had everything. You had a lot, but you weren't handed it on a silver platter. And you weren't told you were better than other people because you might have this, that, or the other. You were told you were equal. And that makes a big difference. You can't relate to people if you think you're better than they are. Like your father could sit up in his office all day long if he wanted to, but he didn't do that. He would leave his desk, go down to the warehouse, and he'd find the dirtiest thing anybody was doing. and he'd crawl in and help them. If you're too good to pick up a mop, if you're too good to clean up a bathroom.
You don't think some of it's ego too, that you have to get it right?
No.
Right.
No.
You don't have a perfectionist streak in you?
I have a big perfectionist streak, but more for myself than other people.
That's what I mean. It's just sort of like, you know, whenever Dad would say, "Hey, come help me," that meant get the hell out of my way.
No, it didn't. It meant come hold this till I can get it in the right
exactly.
place.
Every fight I ever had with that man while I was helping him was basically because he wouldn't take the time to explain to me what to do. He would just be like, "I'll do it right myself."
No, he wanted you to hold a flashlight or look for the cable that was coming through the floor.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all he asked. Look for the cable coming through the floor and hold the flashlight. And you, of all people, sometimes were a little antsy about standing there and doing that. You wanted to go do what you wanted to do.
Yeah, I had my head in my own ideas.
Exactly, and he's like, we need to get this done.
Yep.
Well, I got to go. It was nice working with you in your garden.
It's nice working with you in my garden too. I love you.
Well, make sure you water them now because they need water, but don't drown them. You take that off. I love you, bye.
Pretty World Today.
Sing it.
Sung by Jason Latour. It's such a pretty world today. Look at the sunshine. That's all I know.